So let me start again. This is a joint presentation between Muchos Manos and San Diego Chapter ANG. And it's a special event thanks to Jill Rigoli. We have original Elsa Williams yarn, tapestry yarn. And we have enough actually for everyone here that attended today, okay? If you don't want it, if you don't want any of the yarn, you can help us save the postage, then please let me know or put it in the chat. Put in the chat and let me know and we'll take you off. So at this moment,
Shirley,
yes.
it works beautifully on 13.
Yes, it does. It does. It works beautifully. I would recommend that everyone gives it a shot. Not only that, next month when I show you some of the canvas, some of the things you could do with 13 mesh is really cool. And this would look beautiful against it. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to turn this portion over to Margie. I want to thank you very much. I'm going to make a spotlight for everybody, for her. And then you could start, you know how to unmute yourself, right, Margie?
I'm already unmuted.
Okay, cool. So why don't you go ahead and I'll start the screen whenever you want me to do it, to start on these slides.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Elsa Williams and her history first. I hope that most of you have heard about Elsa Williams. She was a powerhouse in the needlework industry back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Well, not 80s, 70s. She retired in 1978. But she started her business, Needlecraft House in Townsend, Massachusetts in 1950. And she started with a shop. She started teaching in 1952. And she developed this amazing catalog business with incredibly high quality materials. She produced heirloom quality kits, and she had contracts with manufacturers of needlework related products from all over the world and different designers. She had the licensing rights for their works. She marketed crewel embroidery along with pulled thread blackwork and needlepoint kits. And she bought the Homer Winslow, the Winslow Homer house. That's the watercolor artist's home in 1972 and turned it into a school. And Jill Rigoli will be able to talk about that during one of the breaks since she attended that school. I was given a lot of memorabilia by Elsa's daughter, and this is the catalog of the school that shows a picture of the house. And this is a picture of the interior shots. So you can see how elegant and beautiful it was. And she taught beginning and advanced classes. And this even came with the coupon that you would have filled out and sent back to sign up to attend the school. For those who want to learn a little bit more about Elsa's background, there is a link on our website to a very interesting detailed article. And there will be a second article posted that Sandra Helt actually found for me that was printed in the December 1995 Leisure Arts magazine. And I will get a copy of this to Shirley, and she can get it posted on the website. So
we'll send that out instead of the website. We'll send it out instead.
Okay, however you want to do it, I'll get you a copy of it. And thank you to Sandra for giving it to me all those years ago. I did this slide presentation back in 2011, and it was considerably different than what I'm doing today. I've got a little bit more detail that I'm sharing that I didn't share the first time around. So Elsa, on one of her teaching trips to California, fell in love with Pebble Beach. And in 1973, she bought a home in Pebble Beach with views across the golf course right to the ocean. It wasn't a real fancy houses. Most of the houses back then were not fancy. It was a simple one-story ranch house. And in 1975, her company, Needlecraft House, was purchased by SC Johnson Wax, which most of you will recognize if you look at the labels on your Ziploc bag boxes, because that's who bought her all those years ago. And she continued to work for the corporation until she retired in 1978. And she continued to stitch prolifically. Most of the personal stitching that I'm going to be sharing was done after her retirement. Uh, she unfortunately passed away in June of 1995. And I was fortunate to meet her daughter because my mom was on vacation. And we were contacted by her daughter, Lynn, to have a bell pull that was stitched by Lynn thought one of her mother's stitchers of models. And so she came to La Jolla and I met with her and we probably chatted for a good hour and a half. And during the conversation, she said, if you're ever in Northern California, just let me know and I will be happy to show you my mother's retirement house. So for those of you who know me, if you give me that kind of opening, I am going to shoot for the moon. And it just so happens EGA was having their national seminar in San Francisco in 2010. So right there on the spot, I said, would you be interested in opening your home to a tour of EGA ladies? We're having a seminar next year. And she actually said yes. So in 2010, during the EGA San Francisco seminar, 2 busloads of ladies drove down to Pebble Beach. One bus went down in the morning and the second bus arrived after lunch in the afternoon. And Lynn wanted a friendly face that she knew. So she asked me to be there all day. Everybody else came down, spent an hour plus, and then went off to Carmel, had lunch and shopped. I went down on the morning bus and I spent the entire day there. So I was there for about 5-6 hours. So I was able to photograph absolutely everything of stitching relationship that was in the home when everybody else was gone. So I took 158 pictures. And we have reduced it
We're
down.
not seeing all 158.
No, we're only
everybody.
seeing about 55 tonight, ladies. Don't worry. I chose the best of the best of the pictures. So we are going to start with Elsa's personal needlepoint. A few other things about Elsa. She was an Embroiderers Guild of America member, and she taught for Deerfield and Callaway during her tenure with EGA and when she was doing a lot of teaching. She published 4 books, and the first one was Bargello Florentine Canvas Work. The second was Heritage Embroidery. The third was Creative Canvas Work. And the fourth was Her Joy of Stitching, which was 100 of her favorite columns from her syndicated column that she had in the newspaper for 3 years. So if we can get to the first slide, which is this one, this was a needlepoint seascape she had done of the coast of California, living off the coast of the Big Sur area. She really enjoyed that area. Shirley, next slide. This next picture I thought was one of the most spectacular, straightforward basket weave designs you could ever see in person. I was fortunate that Lynn passed on a lot of her mother's memorabilia to me, including copies of Elsa's handwritten notes about her creative process for about 20 of the designs that I'm showing tonight. And this one is called Golden Sunset. It was stitched in 1979. And she writes, one of the most beautiful places in the world is Point Lobos on the California coast south of Carmel. This needle painting captures the reflection of the sun as it filters through the turbulent waves. When I did this needlepoint on 13 mesh linen canvas, which by the way is her favorite size canvas. That's why she has her wool that is perfect for 13 count linen canvas. So she intended to stitch a matching piece depicting the silver sunrise of the East Coast. And her last sentence on this note is, somehow this remains one of the things I have left undone. And it wasn't in the house, so I don't think she ever stitched it. Okay, Shirley, next picture. This is a Bargello chair that she stitched. There were a number of needle-pointed chairs in the home, and you will see quite a few of them. Okay, next one. And this was a pair of embroidered pillows that were on a chaise lounge in a bedroom. And I liked them a lot, so I took the picture. Next picture, great. This is, I think, the most contemporary piece of needlepoint that I saw in the house. I called it needlepoint fan. And as a finisher, I found the finishing very, very unique. I've never seen anything like it. And I thought it was a very, very cool piece of needlepoint. Unfortunately, I don't have any notes about it. Okay, Shirley, next. Okay, this is her needlepoint Chinese horse, and it has a Bargello background. And it was stitched in 1971 after Elsa had gone to China on a trip. And she was inspired by, I believe, she didn't state it by name, the terracotta horses that she saw on the trip. And that was the inspiration for this particular design. And it was a very, very long wall hanging, and I did the close-up so you could see the needlework. Okay, Shirley, next. And this is the cover of her Joy of Stitching book, her 4th book. And it is a combination of crewel. Oh, thank you for getting the close-up. Most of the flowers are in crewel, and the leaves in the background are done in needlepoint. And they're stitched in both crewel and tapestry wool on 13 mesh canvas. Okay, next picture, Shirley. This is another chair that was in the home and done in a needlepoint design, and you cut out the initials. That has Elsa Williams initials in the bottom left corner. Okay, next picture. This is one of my favorite pieces. I have a lot of favorite pieces of Elsa's work. I totally admire what she does. This is called Iris with Pulled Work. It was stitched in 1979. It was designed and embroidered by Elsa. It's a combination of white work and pulled thread background. The background, I believe, was done in 6-strand cotton, and the iris embroidery was done in silk threads. And I think you can tell, but she put a mirror behind the needlework, which I thought was very unique. You can see it glinting through. I had never seen that done before. And she writes in her notes that this was offered as an advanced class at the Homer House School of Needle Art. Okay, next slide, Shirley. If you can make it go to a standard size, and then we can, so you can see the whole image. So this is another one of the pieces that totally blew me away, because this was stitched in 1981. And from what I remember of needlework in the 70s and early 80s, there wasn't a lot of mixed media that I'm remembering today. This is called Rose and Glass Base. And her notes are, having achieved the embroidery of fog, and I will be showing you the piece that is referencing at the end of this slideshow. I was looking for another new project which could present a challenge in needle art. The idea came to try to embroider a crystal vase with transparency effect. The placement of sheer organza against dimensional color created by appliques and overlay of Thai silk gave me an opportunity to embroider the rose in silk threads with the stem continuing into the glass vase. There are actually 3 different fabrics. The drapes, the background, and the table are 3 different materials. Then she's got the applique gauze, which she did some embroidery on, along with the embroidered rose and leaves. And it's just amazing. Next slide, please, Shirley. Okay, this is another piece that I was shocked at what she created at such an early era, I thought. It's called Peony. She created this in 1980. And she writes, the art of resist dyeing combined with flat silk embroidery was brought to my attention when I became interested in the Numera collection of Fahusa at Mills College. So for those of you who have ever been to a seminar at Mills College, you may have seen this collection that she referenced. She discovered that it was being housed in storage, and she was one of the people that got it to be put on display so that the public could appreciate it. So what Elsa did with this piece is she took silk fabric and she used the dye methods that were found in Kyoto. So the piece starts out with a piece of white silk, and the background and the leaves were brush dyed. And then the silk threads of the flower petals are embroidered in flat silk, untwisted silk, which she cup dyed in several tones of gray. And this design was inspired by an old Japanese brush painting. I just was really amazed at all the detail and the artistic ability that she had in creating her designs. Next slide, please, Shirley. Okay, this is a Bargello bench, and she wanted to recreate a meshkin carpet that she had in the home. And so she had one of her friends help her design the Bargello repeats so that she could recreate that. Thank you, Shirley. Next picture. So the yellow irises is another example of Elsa's mixing medias. The yellow iris on the circle, can we go back a slide? Okay, the yellow iris on the circle has applique leather. The daffodil in the lower right corner is applique leather. And she embroidered on Talbot Thai silk, which you can see has a texture to it. It looks very woven with silk threads and then the leather applique. Thank you, Shirley. Okay, next slide. The rest of the pictures are predominantly Elsa's personal needlework. This was a Bargello purse that she stitched, and I thought she was very smart to put her name on it so it wouldn't walk away at a party. Next picture. And this is a pair of chairs that she embroidered for 2 of her granddaughters, Lisa and Julie. And you'll see their names on a number of pieces. A lot of Elsa's models in her catalogs had her granddaughters' names on them. Next, Shirley, please. And this is a purse that she stitched for her granddaughter, Lisa, excuse me. Next picture. And this is a needlepoint collar that she stitched. Now, these items were not regularly left lying around the house in Pebble Beach. Lynn gathered up all of her mother's stitching, and she did a very, very beautiful display of the items all over the home. And otherwise, they would be in drawers and closets and boxes wherever they were normally stored. Next slide, please, Shirley. This was a crewel embroidery done on a circular box. Next slide, please. And I love this clutch bag, this Bargello clutch bag. She did a lot of attaching semi-precious stones to her designs. There's several pieces that you will see other examples of. And I like Bargello, and I thought this was a very elegant bag. Thank you, Shirley. Next picture. Okay, I think we skipped the Christmas stocking. Can we go back to the Bargello Christmas stocking? Thanks. Okay, this is the only stocking that didn't have a name on it. So I don't know if it was just a general decoration. I don't have anything in my notes regarding who this belonged to, but I thought it was very interesting that it was all in Bargello. Next picture, please. Now, as I said, Elsa had a lot of needle-pointed chairs, and these are 2 of 4 Victorian side chairs that had needle-pointed seats and backs, and these were done in 1962. And Elsa wrote in her notes, "I have never liked the cabbage rose of the Victorian period, but I have always been delighted by the flowers created by Flemish painters of the 18th century. These 4 dining room chairs were worked from my sketches patterned to fit these lovely old chair frames." Next picture, please. Okay, this is called, I've got to get the Cells in Warped Space, and it was stitched in 1981, and it was a Christmas present for Lynn's husband. And Elsa wrote that it was inspired by Albert Einstein. And she used silk threads and gold leather applique on silk to create this. And thank you for doing the close-ups, because it really doesn't do this piece justice. I just thought it was very, very cool. And her son-in-law was a scientist, which is one of the reasons why she created this. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a crewel border skirt and Bargello vest that Elsa stitched for her daughter Lynn. Her daughter Lynn was the recipient of a lot of her stitching. Next slide, please. And this is another needlepoint floral armchair. There was a pair of them in the dining room. Next one, please. Okay. The woman on the far left is Lynn, who was Elsa's daughter, and the other 4 ladies were her friends that came and helped with the tour that day. One of them was a retired needlepoint shop owner. One was Elsa Williams' bookkeeper, and 2 of them were Elsa's personal friends. And it was wonderful to chat and visit with them and learn more about Elsa. Next slide, please, Shirley. And this is Elsa Williams' EGA pin. When Lynn got dressed that morning, she said she looked in her jewelry box and she saw the EGA pin. So she had to wear it, since it was a group of ladies coming from the Embroiderers Guild of America. This pin is not offered anymore. I don't think it's been offered for multiple decades, and I believe it's sterling silver, but I thought it was a beautiful EGA pin, and I wish they'd bring it back. Okay, Shirley, next slide. This is a picture of her Cherwin placemats, and I'm sorry, I don't know the technique. They may be tatted or they may be crocheted. And she wrote in some notes that I have that she liked to use clear glass plates so that she could show off the placemats underneath. And then the last slide in this set is of Mountain Fog, which was stitched in 1980. And this was the piece that she referenced for the yellow rose in the glass vase. And she writes, "The dimension of this embroidery was created in 2 panels. The rear piece is in wool embroidery on wool fabric with all the stitches placed vertically as in Bargello. The front section is silk threads on sheer silk fabric. The idea for this piece came to me on California Route 101 when fog-swept mountains lured me to stitch them. It was springtime and the branches of foreground bushes were beginning to form leaves. The transparency of this construction is enhanced by a subtle light. So you can see from her notes where she got the inspiration for a lot of her pieces. So we're going to take a break now and let the members who have Elsa Williams kits and stitch pieces share. And then when we come back, I'm going to have 2 shorter segments that show pictures from her books and from her catalogs.
I believe Jill attended. If you could talk a little bit, Jill, how you attended.
I
And
can
then
do that.
Margaret, didn't you
Yes.
have something, Margaret Cobley? So go ahead, Jill. I'll pin you now.
Anyway, I attended Homer House, the school, in 1975. And it was, actually, I was there on my birthday, so it was in September. And ironically, and surely you will remember, and maybe some others, Margie will, and Sandy will, the week before, my friend Shirley McClure,
Mm-hmm.
and those of you who remember Shirley, and Janice Beacon were at Homer House. But a lot of times, Elsa wouldn't be there. So we were very fortunate. The week I was there, Elsa was there. And talking about the stones, setting the stones, that was one part of one of our classes. And she would come in and try to pop your stone out. And if it wasn't secured properly, then you had to start over. And then she would come back later on to see if she could pop your stone off of your piece. So anyway, I do have, and I'll go get it off the wall, the piece that I did in the class, one of the classes. And the teacher the week I was there was Phallus Ayres, if people remember Phallus Ayres. But she had us one evening over to her house, and she sat in her needlepoint chair, and we were sitting all on the ground, and she was just telling her stories, etc. But the other thing she did, and I'll never forget this, she took us out into the yard, and she had this big bucket of water, and she was demonstrating washing your needlepoint, and then she showed us how to block needlepoint. But she had this huge bucket of cold water, and she had this big piece of needlepoint, which she dipped completely into the water 3 or 4 times, and then took Fell's naphtha soap and rubbed it all over. And that's what she used on everything that she washed and she blocked. So of course, all of us on our next break went down to the little store, which was a block away from Homer House. We all had to come home with our bar of Fell's naphtha soap. But of course, I knew her because at that time I had a needlepoint store in Alexandria, Virginia, and I would go to trade shows. And of course, I bought from her. And she was the original one that had gold thread. And I probably, if I went out and dug in the boxes in the garage, I would have the gold thread. That's Elsa Williams. She had gold and silver, and that was the only metallic thread that we could get at that time. It was, before the Kreiniks started their business. But it was an incredible, the school was absolutely incredible. And after she sold the business, they kept the school for a little while, but eventually it wasn't a moneymaker. So they eventually closed the school. And of course, her factory and everything else. The other story she told us was when she started her business, she had people that would stitch. She would design something and then she'd have stitchers, she'd give them the thread, and they were supposed to keep track of how much thread they used so that she could put it in the kits. So she said when she came out with her first batch of kits, all of a sudden she was getting all of these letters, because in those days you didn't call, all of these letters saying, I ran out of thread. So she went back to this model stitcher who had stitched the original, and found out that she used her threads down to like a quarter of an inch left. So she said what she learned was to put 30% more thread than any of her model stitchers used in her kits. So, and I sold a lot of I carried a lot of Elsa Williams kits, and nobody ever complained about running out of threads, either in her needlepoint kits or on her crewel kits. And I just wished now I had saved some of the crewel kits. And also her needlepoint kits were absolutely the best on the market. And I think it's in my closet. And while somebody else is talking, I have a rug, because what she did is she had like a little outlet store where you could buy things. And I bought a rug at the outlet store, and it's just an outline. Of course, I've never done it, but if I can run in and see if I can figure out where it is, it's got to be in this closet here, because it's not rolled up someplace else. So if somebody else wants to share, I'll go pull one of the class pieces that I did. And what it was, we had part of the class was in pull thread. And this was when pull thread and Ayres taught it, but Elsa Williams came in and also worked with us on it. And the piece that I have on the wall has no background in it. And it has the stone set, and it's done with Elsa Williams yarn. But it was like nobody could believe that we weren't stitching our backgrounds in.
Wow.
And when I brought it home and had it framed, people said, well, how come you didn't put the background in? Because you just didn't do that in those days. This is the middle 70s.
Mhm.
So I'll go in real fast if you want. And
does anyone else has any stories about Elsa?
I just found these in my
there it
drawer.
is, cloisonne.
Okay.
It's cloisonne. They had silver and gold, and that's all she had to work with.
Wow. You
And this
still have that.
stuff's it's terrible stuff. It's like a chainette.
Yeah, it is.
So because, maybe at that time it was all new, right?
That was all they had.
That's all they had. Okay. And anyone else?
We've got Margaret Henderson and Margaret Cobley both have things to share.
Margaret Henderson. Okay, I'll put a spotlight on you, Margaret. You also need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. So I have a kit. I don't have such a long thing because, of course, I was in Canada. But when my husband and I went down to Colonial Williamsburg for our honeymoon, I have this kit that I did back then. And of course, the interesting thing about this is it's not a counted thread sampler. It is stamped. And when I did it, I thought nothing of it until I started doing counted thread work. And then I realized how frustrating it was, because I tried another one that was this stamped cross stitch. But yeah, this is from back in 1988.
Can I tell you something about that, Margaret? Because I've done the exact same thing. I stitched that when I was in high school. My mom bought the kit, started it. She did the strawberries down in the bottom left corner. And then I got it and I did the rest of it. But here's the thing. That is a reproduction sampler, not from Elsa Williams' original line. That was put out in an S.C. Johnson wax catalog that I have a copy of from 1982. So
Oh, wow, okay.
that was
So
from
that's where I got
after.
this Colonial Williamsburg that sold this.
Yeah,
But then I have this pillow that's from the same era, and I've got another kit because this is starting to wear after 30 years. This is starting to wear because it's been on our bed and the kids and the dogs and everything wear and tear. So my husband found another kit on Etsy and got me the kit so I can do this again. And then this kit is a more recent one that is cool work, which I absolutely loved doing this.
I
And it was so
recognize the
fast.
design.
Yeah, it's so fast and so easy. I just sort of put it, it's you can see it's lumpy because it's been down on the family couch. And again, kids and dogs. But like I said, everybody enjoys. I mean, to me, it's like I could keep it pristine, but it's just so nice to see it on the couch every day, even if it is getting worn. So and that gives me another one if it wears out.
Thank you, Margaret.
I found my piece, Shirley. Do you want me
Okay.
to?
Sure, I'll spotlight for you, for everybody here. Go ahead and remember
Oh, wait a minute. I've got to take out the,
the background. Yeah.
yeah.
So I have a question while Jill's doing this. So SC Johnson,
Okay, how do tell me again how I take the background out?
you have to go into stop video, look at stop video, don't,
Okay,
and then click on the arrow up, choose
Okay.
virtual background and do none. Choose virtual background and then say none on that.
okay, say none.
Yeah, then it'll take it out. Okay,
Uh,
all right, there's none.
I got it.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
All right, Jill, you can
Good.
show us the piece now.
it's got glass on it,
Yeah, so it's hard to see.
reflecting.
Yeah, it's reflecting on the computer. Maybe angle it. Yeah, there. It's a little better.
Okay, and it's done with an off-white Elsa Williams yarn, and you can see the stone in the center.
Yeah.
And
Did you try to pop it
everybody's
out?
was different. I mean, there was no pattern. What she did is she had us start by setting the stone, and then we did needle weaving, and then we put French knots in
Wow.
between our spokes.
That looks awesome.
And then there's a spider web down in one corner, and my initials are down in another corner.
Can I
And-
ask, what is the stone? Is that something from the beach in Pebble
No.
Beach? Or-
No. This was in Massachusetts.
Okay,
And it is just a semi-precious that they gave us. You know,
In
they
your
had a
notes-
bowl with stones in it, and we could pick out the one that we wanted for our class.
Jill, in her notes that I have, she says that she got a lot of her stones from Brazil and India.
Really? Okay, well
Yeah.
then that's probably where it came from. And
Yeah.
then I've got the books that I've got her Bargello book.
Yes, and that's
then-
got a lot of nice patterns in it.
Right, and then inside, and I don't know whether you can,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
going to
that's
be,
great. Wow.
and it says many, many good wishes for many good stitches. Elsa S. And it was September 12th, 1975 at Homer House.
wow.
And then
You
I
know-
also have her creative canvas. And she said that with good wishes for continued accomplishments in creative canvas work.
You know, I asked that question about the stone because, and I wasn't quite clear that it was on the East Coast as opposed to after she came to California, but a few miles south from Pebble Beach, you go further south past Big Sur, as you get closer to like San Simeon, Hearst Castle, there's a section of the beach there that's called Jade Beach. Jade, like Jade. So I thought, well, maybe it was a piece from Jade Beach. So that was why I was asking that.
I mean,
Glad I learned it
it
was,
was an amazing experience.
I can imagine.
Getting to know her and getting, the fact that, because I think the week before she wasn't there. And also our EGA group, it must have been EGA, not ANG in Washington, DC at the time. This was in the 70s. We had a huge group. And she came and taught. And we had like over 200 people there in her class.
She once taught 350 people in Japan, and they had to have a lottery just to keep it down to that many people.
It was amazing. And she came, we had in that group, we had some extremely wealthy ladies that basically had mansions. So they could put her and her husband up and had a reception for a number of us. I was on the board, so I got to go, to the reception. And but she had a huge following. And the fact that she could teach that many people, and we could sit there and stitch, and we're just talking about, and she's up there because they didn't have all the equipment they have today.
I was fortunate enough to go to Homer House for 7 sessions.
Wow.
Living in Massachusetts, where I worked at the time. The owner of the company was a teacher for the business end of needlework at Homer House. So he said, would you like to go for a week of embroidery? So I agreed to do that and ended up going for 7 weeks full. And I was honored to be invited to be in their first teacher certification class. So I was with Mary Dick Diggs, and I'm trying to remember the other 3 ladies' names, but there were 5 of us in the very first teacher certification class that Elsa Williams had. But my one story that I want to share about that, before dinner at Homer House, and it was an experience because you lived there and you just lived and you worked and you inhaled needlework and the delicious food that they would serve too, by the way. Carrot cake, I still remember. But one of the things, Elsa was usually not there when I was attending. She happened to be there my first week there. My first week, I had Joni Schoaf as a teacher. I don't know if any of you remember Joni. She was a good friend of Judy Soliotis's. Grace O'Neill was a crewel embroiderer. I had Grace for several sessions, Shay, Pendre, Marnie Ritter. But my second week there, Elsa happened to be there, and she would stay at what was called the Tree House. It was in back of Homer House. So she would stay back there. But after dinner, she would sit in the living room. We would have sherry before dinner, have our dinner, and then meet Elsa in the living room. We had to show her what we had stitched. Everyone had to go up, show exactly what they had learned that week, because this was a Friday after the awards banquet, or their thimble dinner banquet, silver thimble dinner. And I can remember being so mousy and quiet, and I had done some crewel leaves that I didn't like. I knew they had to come out, and I was hoping she would not notice me. She went to everyone in the room. Everyone had to go up, explain what they did, and she spotted me in the corner and she signaled me to come up, and I went up there, and I'm saying, well, this sleeve right here has to come out. It's not worked correctly. I know the slant is. And she said, that really is very interesting. So many years later, Joni Schoaf, if any of you knew her, she happened to be my mentor for needlework and encouraged me to go into teaching. Many years later, Joni said to me, Sue, do you remember the time that Elsa looked at your work and said, that was interesting? I said, oh yeah, I really do remember that. She said, let me tell you what she really meant. She meant find another hobby, dear. So that was my time with Elsa Williams. But it was such an experience to be able to be submersed in needlework. And I really feel fortunate to have been able, probably because I'm so close to West Townsend, that I could go out there and enjoy 7 sessions altogether. But I loved every single bit of it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Sue. And I'm
If I find another job.
I'm glad you didn't take her and you know, literally. I'm glad you're still stitching.
I didn't know what she meant until Joni Schoaf told me, and Joni was a good friend of hers through the school.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't know, because you're a wonderful teacher and designer.
Thank you very much. It wasn't said for a compliment, but it was just the funniest thing when Joni said, do you remember what she said? Let me tell you what she meant. So, improvement.
We have Pamela just came on board. Is that Pamela Harding?
Yep, sorry I'm late. I had I had dinner with my priest.
That's okay. That's fine. I'm glad you dropped in. We're right now sharing stories about Elsa Williams, and then we just have 2 short presentations of her other work, which is absolutely fascinating. If there's no anyone else want to share anything,
Margaret Cobley was going to share some
Oh, that's
things,
right.
I believe.
Margaret Cobley, you don't have to.
No, I can.
Oh, she's a real good authority. We should hear what Margaret has to say.
Margaret,
Margie's turned me into an Elsa Williams fangirl.
ah,
Terrible fangirl. So I focus on the cruel projects that she designed or she sold. So I only have one finished. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, I remember that one.
My light behind me. There you go. This one is actually designed by Elsa.
wow. Did you find that on Etsy?
No, it's on eBay. They're pretty common. This one's very old because its instructions were all in black and white. There was no color picture.
Oh.
And you can, okay, so there's 2. I've been watching Elsa Williams crewel kits now for 10 years since I saw Margie's presentation. So I know quite a bit about them. And there's 2 categories of them. There's original Elsa Williams kits and there's Johnson kits, which I call JCA because that's what they changed their name to. So the JCAs tend to look like this. They have this green border and they say this across the top. And those aren't really Elsa Williams kits. Those are JCAs. Although JCA took some of their old Elsa Williams designs and kept producing them. So like that little crewel sampler was still being produced by JCA. I found newer ones.
Do they still do it? Do they still produce them? Do they
don't anymore. JCA's out of business.
Oh,
But
okay.
you can still find them easily on eBay and other
They
places.
still retain, Johnson & Johnson still retain those rights though, right?
I think they've actually sold them to somebody. And I was in contact with her a couple of years ago, and she said she had bought the Elsa Williams back catalog and was going to try and put out kits, but I don't think it's gone anywhere.
Who's that?
But yeah, it is, because the designs are really good. I really like Elsa Williams because her designs are classic. And you may not like the palette, but the designs are still valid and you can do your own thing with them if you don't like the colors. And I do want to mention, the other thing that's really fun about the original Elsa Williams kits is she did all kinds of interesting things like, oh, here's one of them. This is a clock. And it actually has the frame and the clock and the whole thing is a kit.
Yeah, if you got the footstool, you got the footstool,
Yeah,
not just
you
the
got, you get
linen.
everything. So there's footstool. I recently saw a twin bed, you know,
Headboard.
the,
It
it
includes
had
the twin beds?
for a twin bed.
No, but it doesn't
And
include the beds,
there's,
no.
there's luggage straps, there's footstools, there's sconce holders. There's all kinds of things that they produce, which is really fun. And the other thing, since Margaret mentioned the Williamsburg piece, I think this is an original Williamsburg Elsa Williams. This is a bell pull, and it doesn't say Johnson anywhere on it, although it could be a transitional piece because it does have this. I'm always suspicious when I see this script, her name in script. I'm never sure if that's really Elsa Williams or if that's when they were, because that's what Johnson used. So real Elsa Williams kits usually definitely will have something like this on it.
Yeah,
So
needlecraft. I have a
that's
number,
her logo, pretty much, or a variation on her logo.
Margaret, I have a number of her catalogs.
Yeah.
And so if you ever want to compare what's in the catalogs, because I have 4 of her older catalogs, plus I have one from the Johnson era.
Yeah, I have some catalogs too.
And the one thing I noticed about
Margie, I am a cautionary tale from listening to your presentation.
well, that's because you're a cruel embroiderer, and that's why you went down,
Oh
you went
yeah.
down the rabbit hole.
I do want to show this. This is one of my favorites. I
Okay.
haven't, yeah, this is a clutch purse.
Oh, you're going to see the original in the next set of slides.
I think this was actually designed by Louise Crimes, which is one of
Yes,
Elsa's
it probably
really good
was because
designers.
she
She
had the
was
rights to
good.
designs.
So anyway, the kits are readily available on Etsy and eBay. And even the newer, the JCA products, I always thought JCA's kits were pretty nice, the Elsa Williams JCA's. They had good design, and I've stitched quite a few of those actually, but they're not really Elsa Williams to me because they didn't come from her company. But anyway.
How much do they go for, Margaret? What's the average
varies.
price?
It varies. I have one that I did, which I find really funny. This is a JCA. And I saw somebody trying to sell it for $400.
Wow.
Yeah.
eBay is just wide open to whoever wants to try to sell whatever they can.
I did see it sell for less than 100 not too long ago. So if you see one that you like and it's really expensive, wait and see if it comes up, because they cycle around. And I wouldn't jump at something for $400. That seems a little crazy. Now, if you find something like the bed, the bed head, as I think it was $300, that's probably pretty rare. And it was big. So I didn't think that was totally outrageous. And it had a lot of design on it. So it would have been, it was a big piece.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
Sure.
the fibers that we're giving out is actually from Elsa Williams. It does have her company on that pointed out, Needlecraft. It does have that Needlecraft collection. So this is the original. Okay, so I know it's getting late and a lot of people would especially from the
Go
East
really
Coast,
fast, Shirley.
go back. So let's go back here and let's go back to sharing this. Now, what I have to do is go to a different.
You're going to go to the cruel file.
Right. Yep, I am. So here's the cruel file right here. And let me just start up with that one. Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
So most of the pictures that I'm going to be showing in this set of slides is from her Heritage Embroidery book. And this is the first color plate on the inside cover. And this is called Merton. It was stitched in 1964.
Sorry.
It was designed and embroidered by Elsa, and it was inspired by a fabric that she saw during a trip to England. So the cool thing about all the memorabilia I was given by her daughter is I really got to hear the backstory that you don't normally see. And I didn't present that in as much detail the last time around. So this time, Shirley encouraged me to focus on all these notes. Okay, next picture. This next one is probably one of my most favorite of all of hers, even though I have a lot of favorites. And for California residents, this will really spark a chord for you. It's called The Water of Life. She stitched it in 1976. And when I first saw it, it was one of the first pieces I saw in the house. And I went, it's got both embroidery and needlepoint on it. When Shirley can zero in on different sections, Elsa wrote, I embroidered this piece in 1976 to remember the great California drought and to wish that the water of life would always be available. It portrays ancient Chinese symbols of great meaning. The needlepoint border represents the sea of good fortune, and the sky background includes the clouds of happiness. The crewel embroidered vase is padded embroidery satin, has the imperial dragon guarding the water of life while reaching for the pearl of wisdom. And here's the interesting thing. The original sketch for this piece was by Cafe Fawcett.
Wow.
Yes.
Cool.
Now, this was the mid 70s, and he was starting to become a big thing back then. So she really drew from a lot of sources for her inspiration. Okay, next piece, please. This is another design from her Heritage Embroidery book, and it's called Inspirations, and it's actually 4 different segments from the book that she put into this sampler, and it's of leaves, stems, flowers, and animals. Shirley, if you can go to the next one. This is a bell pull from her catalog collection. It's called Tudor Bell Pull. It was done in the 1960, and this is a Louise Crimes design. And based on the notes that she wrote on several other pieces, she had the licensing rights for Louise's designs. Thank you, Shirley. The next piece is another catalog design, and it is an embroidered alphabet animal sampler kit. Elsa really liked to have a lot of products that could be used in children's rooms. She was a mother and a grandmother, and so she focused a lot of her designs for a child's room. Next picture, please. And this is a mirror. It's called Dynasty Mirror, and it's embroidery on satin, and it was in the same room as the 2 round box pillows in the first set of slides. And I love this piece. This is daffodils with pulled thread background, and it was available in the catalog. She also stitched this without the pulled thread border. I have another picture of it. The daffodils are a different color, and it doesn't have the border done. Next picture, please. This is her cherry tree design. It's in her Heritage Embroidery book. And she designed it, but she did not stitch this particular piece. One of her stitchers did it, and it was designed in 1960. Next one, please, Shirley. This is from her catalog. It's an old colonial crewel embroidery placemat. And it also offered coordinating coasters and napkin rings for your elegant table settings. Next one, please, Shirley. And this is, can you go back so we see the whole picture of the chair? This is Elsa's tour de force. This is the Tudor Tree of Life wing chair. And she stitched this in 1962, only it took longer than 1962 to stitch it. This is her notes. The Great Tree of Life is one of the oldest and best beloved themes of crewel embroidery. There are no limits to its interpretations, and this chair, there are dozens of beautiful spaces for filling stitches. Because I cannot enjoy the tedious work of making repeats, I worked only one complete section of the pattern. The balance of this chair was embroidered by a needlewoman in the Azores, and she worked at it for a period of 3 years, copying my work stitch for stitch. So she sold the linen by the yard. It started out at $16 a yard. In one of the later catalogs, I saw it for $19 a yard. I'm figuring it would take 5 yards to do this size of a wingback chair, and then figure at least 3 years to stitch it. So this was quite an investment, and her daughter Lynn was trying to see if she could find a museum that would want to have it so that the public could appreciate it. I don't know if that ever occurred. If you could go to the next picture, there is the embroidered clutch bag that Margaret Cobley had the kit of. And where is it in my notes? It has 5 different stitches in it, but that's the original model. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here's another picture from Heritage Embroidery. This is the horizontal basket. It was stitched in 1964, and it is another Louise Crimes design. And Elsa writes, it is especially good for crewel embroidery because of the spaces in the design. I have always considered this one of my best pieces. I was satisfied with all the stitches I chose. Also, I like the colors and the blending of the tones. She was a very, very meticulous, exacting needleworker. And I think that's why her company did so well, is because she offered such a superior product. And the last picture from the Crewel series and from her book, this is Benchworth, and it was stitched in 1962. And in her notes, she says, this is named for a delightful town in Surrey, England, where a bouquet in the entrance hall of my sister-in-law's home provided me with the inspiration for this piece. The soft natural forms and the delicate shading is because my embroidery stitches imitated the wash effects of my watercolor sketch. And she goes on to say, thousands of copies of this piece have been embroidered, but I have never seen 2 that look alike. So, and this was an incredibly popular kit from her catalog. So that's the last of the Crewel pictures. And then I have a dozen from her Creative Canvas workbook. So when Shirley gets that up, there we are. This is a reproduction of the Sturbridge Village chair that you could get the needlepoint canvas in the catalog. Next picture, please. And this is another catalog design, and you can see it's been personalized with her granddaughter's birthday in it. Next picture. And here's a set of luggage straps that Margaret had referenced. There were at least 3 luggage strap designs that were offered in the catalog, and you got the luggage carrier with them. Next picture. This is from the Creative Canvas workbook. This is called Daisies, and it has a Byzantine stitch background. Next picture, please. This and the next picture are from the catalog. They are Christmas stockings. And once again, she used her granddaughter's names in the models, because these are the exact models in the catalogs. Next picture, please. And this is from the Creative Canvas workbook, and it's called Embryo Forms. She stitched it in 1973 using semi-precious stones from Brazil and India. And they were stitched with the buttonhole stitch with her cloisonne metallic thread. And there's a variety of needlepoint stitches that consist of the background. So that's pretty fancy work from my memory of 1973. This is another one of her needlepoint chair designs. This is called Needlepoint Pattern Weave, and she sold this canvas by the yard. She had 4 of these dining room side chairs in the dining room. So people could buy the canvas and stitch it and have their own chairs upholstered. Next slide, please. This is the infamous Winslow Homer Seascape. And it was adapted into this design, the original watercolor, in 1973. And Elsa attended a garage sale from Winslow Homer's niece in the 50s. And she bought a lot of picture frames for 75 cents. And the original watercolor was in this lot of used picture frames. And she did the adaptation and she created the kit and she sold the kit in her catalogs. And she writes, "My joy has never ended and I am delighted to have made copies available for needle artists to produce their own Winslow Homer scene of waves against the rocks in Prote's Neck, Maine." The original watercolor was dated 1893 and is hung directly above the needlepoint adaptation picture. Because I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with lots of pictures, I just did the close-up of the needlepoint. And the next picture, please. This is from Creative Canvas Work. This is tomato design. The tomato is done in encroaching go blend, and the white border is a Parisian stitch. And the last picture is the cover of Creative Canvas Work. And it was stitched in 1970. And she called the piece Field Bouquet. And she designed it specifically for the cover of Creative Canvas Work. It includes both crewel and tapestry wools, and of course, again, it's stitched on 13 count linen canvas. And once again, she has done like her other field of bouquets. She did a lot of the flowers in embroidery, and she did the background and stems in the needlepoint. So I hope you all have gotten a lot of inspiration from Elsa's work, and that you'll do some research on all the wonderful things she created, and hope you all enjoyed the presentation.
Well, I want to thank Margie. Let's have a show of hands. Wonderful presentation. I will be posting this on a Google Drive. I will share actually all the Google Drives, and maybe Margie, you can add more photos, if you like. No, I don't know if you want to do all 158 of them, but you can look at them for more, details or to learn more about her. But again, thank you so much, Margie, for doing that. And
It
I
was
know,
wonderful.
any questions for Margie?
No, it's great.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you, Margie.
Oh, that was
It was
wonderful.
an improvement over my last time. Sorry, Haviva.
Mhm.
I said it was wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everybody, for coming. So I'm going to keep the room open for another half hour. If anybody just want to chat with each other. I know the East Coast people are probably dying to go to sleep right now. Right, Stu?
Confess.
Yes, it's only 11:23.
Margie, thank you very much. It brought back a lot of fantastic memories. I love seeing the pieces, love seeing her work, and it just brought back good memories of a good time back in the 70s.
Well, it's wonderful to hear everyone's